Um, just before we get into this week, we got another look at Avery's wrist, and it's going to require surgery, which is going to put him out indefinitely. Like I said, you deal with different bumps in the road throughout a season. Obviously, it's another one for us. It's really, really important to our team. Has been for 4 years, and he's disappointed, but we're encouraged that the surgery is going to be something that's, I don't know if there's a such thing as minor surgery. Surgery, but it's not a knee. It's his offhand, and something that he's going to be able to recover from and be able to play again. Most importantly, and we don't know the timetable on return, so we'll see kind of how that goes and kind of go from there. Other than that, had a spirited practice today. Guys are in a good place from a mental standpoint, and excited about the upcoming opportunities that are, plentiful in this conference.
So how does that change things for you? I imagine it looks a lot like it did the other day, but Caleb Asbury slot in there, and then you get more minutes out of Chris.
Yeah, I mean, game by game, obviously more opportunity for probably a little bit of everybody, in terms of minutes load or opportunity to impact winning. Just positionally, Chris obviously is another guy right there in the mix. Caleb Asbury, but Q's kind of going back and forth between the wing and some 4 for us, and so we'll just kind of try to piecemeal it together.
You said you expect him back?
I don't want to try to predict this thing. Never know how people respond to surgery. Everybody's body responds, recovers differently. So I don't want to get ahead of the surgery itself. So we need to get through that, and then probably have a better idea of exactly what a time frame could look like. But even then, I think it kind of depends on how he deals with, the rehab portion of things.
How did Avery react to that news?
He was disappointed. I mean, naturally, this kid worked his butt off, and he's gone through that process that we talk about a lot of coming in as a freshman, not really having an idea. A good friend of mine calls it being just not knowing what you know, right? And then getting to a place where you kind of know, but you can't do, and then learning how to do, and then knowing everything you need to know. And he's got to that point where he knows everything he needs to know, and certainly a setback for him. And he's been a big part of putting his team in the position that we're in halfway through league play, being 500 and having some aspirations for playing important basketball games in February. So he's disappointed he won't be a part of it in the immediate future, but certainly will continue to be around and work his way back, as quickly, but certainly as safely and as in a manner that gives him the best chance to have both a future in basketball and in life.
Do you feel like you guys been through with Moose's injury? Now that you feel better prepared, maybe to deal with something?
It's so different.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's why you try to recruit depth. Old coach friend of mine says the depth is underrated in practice and overrated in games until you have an injury. And then it shows up, right? And so I have confidence in the guys that are on the roster that can step in and each do a little bit more. I don't need anybody to go from, averaging 8 to averaging 20, right, to make up all 12 of his points or whatever he's averaging. But we need everybody to maybe get 2 more points, another rebound, another assist, help us out. And the collective, we believe, can get the job done.
How much more important does that make kind of the development of Caleb Asbury over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it all important. It's why we show up and do our jobs to the best of our ability every day. It's why we preach in our locker room to, no matter how it's going for you individually, you got to stay locked in. You never know when you're going to be asked to do a little bit more, or sometimes even a lot more. And in his defense, his first game starting, he played pretty well.
When did you know, or do you know, that the Caleb Asbury to Oklahoma State transfer, that it worked?
I mean, I don't know if you ever really know unless it doesn't work. I think you know when it doesn't work fairly quickly, and it's less about the production. It's about the production always, but it's about the fit more. And sometimes a really productive player can be a tough person to deal with inside your locker room. And he's been, a pleasure to deal with. He's been a pleasure to coach. He's obviously been a really productive player in terms of shooting. The thing that I feel comfortable about is our staff did a really good job evaluating a need and filling it with a guy who is capable of coming in and produce right away.
Because Caleb said he knew he made the right decision, before he even played a game here. Is that because he felt the fit was right?
Again, I can't answer for him. I would imagine just the comfortability of his teammates, the competitive atmosphere that he was in. He felt he was being challenged and pushed, and I think he felt like he was at a place where he could achieve some goals that he hadn't achieved yet in his career, which is having a chance to play in postseason and being a part of a team at this level, that's can compete with any other team in this conference.
With the hunger that the team has to make the NCAA tournament based off last year, and obviously just trying to make it, we talked to Caleb and Woody, and 5-5 with how you guys have been playing. You guys are sniffing the NCAA tournament. Does bracketology and social media, is that like a distraction for your guys? How close they are, or could you see it's like a motivation to try to get to the tournament? Or
I see it less as motivation and more as like real, because when I'm again, I hope you guys know, I'm pretty open, honest with the kids about what's happening out there. I don't know if any of those people really know, but they're almost pretty close most of the time. So you'd be kind of a fool to ignore it. At the same time, we know that most of what's going to happen is within what we do on the court. It's not what they predict we're going to do, it's how we actually play. And so what we got to focus on is our preparation, which is, again, what made last year so difficult, is preparing for nothing. Not that, pride and all that stuff is great, but everybody knows who pays any attention to basketball that you play college basketball games to play in the tournament and to be a part of March Madness. I remember it as a player vividly. The experience, there's nothing like it in the world. And so we have open discussions about it, what it's going to take. We talk about quad 1 and quad 2, and we are a team. We've got a quad 2 loss and we've got a quad 3 loss on our resume. It's reality. They're not going away. So we got to make sure we don't add another, and that we make up what we can right when we have an opportunity to do so.
so does that make Tech more important, or is every game in Big 12 play from here on out equally as important?
Yeah, Tech is a type of game that could change. It could go from quad 2 to quad 1. So they can get going here and run off a few wins and all of a sudden move themselves up. So in terms of conference games, we try to just focus on how do we win? How do we put ourselves in best position to have success on Wednesday at 7? Again, their team I watched get down 23 points and show great grit and fight to come back and win. And they got some talented players. So we have to prepare the same way that we did for TCU and OU last week. Talk about personnel a little bit differently, talk about their scheme a little bit differently, but most of the focus has to be on us playing really, really good basketball.
In years where you guys haven't started as hot as you'd like to in Big 12 play, you've said nobody's going to feel sorry for us. How do you get your guys to not maybe look at Tech's Big 12 record and keep the focus going into this game?
Who are we? It's not like we're 9-1. If that was the case, I'd be concerned about that. But I'm looking at a team who's just at 500, and we won 3 in a row, but we just lost 3 in a row not too long ago. So we know how quickly things can turn in conference play. So that's why you don't even talk about anybody else's record. You talk about who they are. You talk about what they do well. You talk about what you're going to have to do to give yourself a chance to win. And then you got to go out there and actually do it. And you have to do it understanding that they're not going to lay down. Doesn't matter how big of a lead we try to draw, or if we get down, it's going to be a battle from the opening tip to the final buzzer. And if that's not the approach we take, then shame on us. We're not serious about accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish.
Without Avery, that's going to put more ball handling duties on John Michael and Bryce, I'd assume. Do they practice harder at that, or at this point are they kind of are what they are in that aspect?
There's certain things that you kind of maybe drill down a little bit more detail on. But the fact of the matter is we kind of talked about this even coming into the year. There are 3 guys that we thought were capable of being primary playmakers and decision makers for us. And then we're talking specifically about John Michael Avery and Bryce at the time. Chris Harris has some capabilities there. And so, you know, some of the parts is who we need to be, you know, because we don't have anybody like Avery. You know, nobody's as dynamic with the ball, and nobody has the fast twitch athleticism that he has. But they all have different skills that they can bring to the table that can all be beneficial.
You mentioned Chris. What do you see from him lately? Seems like he's getting more and more comfortable with the ball and doing things.
Yeah, Chris has always been a good player. It's just more about, you know, his confidence, and it's hard, right? When you, like I said, you come in and you feel pretty good about the career you're gonna have, and then basically 2.5 years of that career you spend with a brace on your knee. It's hard to continue to believe that you can have the success, but you know, he's been a great teammate. He's been very coachable, and because of that, he's helped our team continue to get better. But he's gotten better, and you know, I'm not gonna roll him out there and have him play 40 minutes of point guard against Nolan Richardson's, you know, 40 minutes of hell, but he's serviceable there, and if we need him to play the point for us, he's capable of doing it.
He said this week is his 3-year anniversary of his first injury.
Yeah.
How far has he come since then?
I mean, light years.
Yeah.
You know, it's I never had a major surgery. I had a minor surgery that ended my career, really. It was a meniscus back in 2004, but I could imagine, again, trying to get back on the court and then it happening again, you know, had to be really, really difficult. And so the psychological warfare you put yourself through during those situations is hard. So he had to figure it out himself, but I think the support system here helped him as well.
You mentioned without Avery's quickness, is there something you think you have to change or prepare for without having, you know, his quickness and ability to move the ball around too?
Not necessarily. I don't think we need to change anything. Obviously, other than who plays the minutes that's going to be met. I mean, it's a 30-minute guy. I mean, so there's a lot of minutes that have to be kind of redistributed here for the immediate future. And again, we don't know how long, but we know on Wednesday, right? Someone's going to have to play those minutes. But I think the guys handled it pretty well on Saturday, and look forward to seeing who else continues to rise to that challenge.
I imagine people will talk about the offense without Avery Anderson, what you lose there. How about on the defensive end? What do you lose?
Man, I mean, he's our best on-ball defender. There's no question. I've said that, you know, repeatedly. He's one of the best on-ball defenders I've ever coached, and I've coached some really good ones. So we, you know, the thing that you have is you still have a good foundation defensively, good schemes, and we still have the ultimate of what you have to have is rim protection, which sets the tone for everything else.
You talk about improving as the year goes on. Do you feel like you guys are kind of ahead of schedule than you've been in past years, whether it's, you know, certain areas?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't try to compare the years because the personnel kind of dictates what your ceiling is. I like where we are. I'll say that. You know, my goal, and I tell our team this, I think my ultimate goal is from the beginning of the season, I understand it's about wins and losses, but does our team maximize what it's capable of doing, right? Based on the talent, the experience, the competition we play, do we max out? And, you know, it's been a year that we haven't here, right? It's probably my second year. From a talent standpoint, we had other issues. Last year, again, I'm not asking for a mulligan. It's just a difficult thing to really live through. I mean, it's hard. I mean, no one can really understand it. but literally going to the locker room and not at this time of year be able to talk about anything mattering a month from now and asking them to play hard against the best competition in the country for 9 more games. Kudos to my staff. I don't know how they did it. But I do think this team is improving at the rate that I admire.
Talking about Caleb Boone, those post moves he's been showing this whole season, did he come into OSU with those post moves in the bag, or is that development?
You know, a lot of it is natural instincts. He was coached by a really good high school coach. You know, his coach at Tulsa Memorial did a tremendous job of setting a foundation for him and teaching him what it's going to take for him to be successful. Unfortunately, he didn't have the nutrition plan available to him that, you know, in most high school programs wouldn't. but he set a pretty good tone for the kid in terms of speaking life into what reality would be for him at this level. And I think he came in understanding the work that it would take, but he certainly had a good foundation. Mom was a good player, dad played, so he started off in a good place. But again, our staff works really hard at it. I mean, JB and LB for the last 2 years. But when he first got here, and John Cooper was here, we worked with him a lot. We've had a lot of coaches that have had their hands on him, and I've been, thankful to have all those guys continue to help develop his confidence, because you're starting to see the rewards of that.
So when Caleb gets to OSU and he has all the nutrition plans and everything at his disposal, did he, get with that pretty quick and start building his body, or did it take him a little while to kind of get in the flow of it?
It took a while. It took a couple years, to be honest. But it wasn't wasn't necessarily out of negligence as much as it was out of ignorance and lack of like when you don't have food, you don't really understand. So your body adapts to not having. And then you get to this place and they tell you need to put on 25 pounds and you need to just eat until you're sick. And you're like, I'm not really hungry. But part of it is you've trained your body to just accept not having food. It's a sad commentary, guys, but it's the reality of his life. I can kind of relate, but not to that extreme. So we get here and we're like, eat, and he's like, I'm not hungry. And we're like, dude, you need to eat. And he's like, I'm getting sick trying to eat the way you guys are telling me to eat. And so it took a while. And to his credit, he tried and he gained some, and then he couldn't figure out a way to stick it. And I think, between Mark Mitchell and my wife, fortunately, they found a way to get him to understand what he liked and how to eat it. And this offseason, he had a tremendous one. He didn't go home at all. He was here throughout May. He was here throughout August when everybody left, and he spent a lot of time getting confidence in his body. And I think it's showing up now in the endurance, right? Because it's the long game. A lot of guys struggle at this time of year, but he's getting better in this physical.
Just from a practical standpoint, playing in the post, banging around with some of the biggest dudes in the Big 12, how does his weight and his new body, benefit him this season in ways we maybe didn't see it freshman year, sophomore year? I
think first of it is just feeling better, right? There's a psychology of so when you're 175 and the guy's 265, you automatically feel a certain way about it. But if you get to like 218, 220, you feel a little bit better about it. And so if the other guy's like 230 and you're 220, you're like, okay, but when you're 178 and he's 235, you feel like, man, somebody else should be guarding this guy. So the psychology of it is a big part of it. And then the physical ability to hold up, to hold your positioning, to take a hit. I think he's got more N1s this year than he's had in his career. And that's just a part of the confidence that comes from feeling physically more capable of doing the job.
You mentioned all the coaches that he's had down there. For a lot of guys, that could be difficult. But are there things that you see that, he picked up that from John Cooper, he picked up that from Cannon? Are there things that you can see that he's done that with?
Again, you have to ask. I can't speak to his. What I would say is we try to teach the fundamentals the same, regardless of who's coaching there, so that there's not that loss if someone, because hopefully the goal for me, for my coaches also, is to move on and become head coaches. And so I never want a kid to feel like he's lost if someone gets promoted. So we try to teach a foundation of things, but everybody has their own style. So if you want to talk stylistically, you probably have to ask him what was different between the guys.
Wait, do you remember when Avery tweaked his wrist? Was it the Kansas State game? Because he played Baylor.
No, he actually initially hurt his wrist in the Texas game.
Here.
It was early
Okay.
in the game, and I don't know if you guys remember. The first thing that I was tipped off to was he missed like 4 free throws in that game, and he'd been shooting like 90%.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, and then he tried to play K-State, couldn't quite get it going. He's bobbling the ball all over the place, and so it got better. Rehabbed it, played it better at Baylor, come home, and he re-injured it again last week against OU.
Just to be clear, has he had surgery or?
Well, Wednesday.
Okay.
Anything else? Wrap it up there.